This is our next to last class of this year, meaning of this like academic year, I guess you could call it. Hopefully we'll have one also next Wednesday. That's the idea. And then we will finish. Our goal is to finish Perek Hey, chapter 5. And you don't actually have to have been in previous classes, I think, to join. Obviously, if it's something you don't know, you can ask or you might have missed out. But one is not specifically based on the other. And as I said, in the summer, there'll be summer series, as we usually do, more sparse. In the past years, we did modern Jewish thinkers, which was quite successful, and everybody, each of the rabbis took two modern Jewish philosophers or thinkers or whatever it was called, and gave 2 classes, and that was great. Each year we did something else, and then there will be special Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur offerings in September. We have a whole month. As I mentioned, I will be giving 4 classes on Sefer Yonah, on Jonah, 4 classes, 1 for each chapter, and I hopefully will be giving it during the day as well as in the evening for those who can't come during the day, and we'll see how that goes. But I'm really, really excited to do that. I've been doing 9 to 9 and skipped a little. I mean, I'm a little behind, but 9 to 9 is the number of chapters in the whole Tanakh from beginning to end, and I've been doing that. And their commentary on Jonah I thought was phenomenal, so I thought I'm just going to bring that in a class. Then we'll have the Chagim, and then after the Chagim we will pick up again from chapter 6 in the Megillah, which will bring us maybe to Purim, or we'll finish before Purim, but I do want to finish the Megillah. I don't see any reason not to finish the Megillah. All right? Everybody good with that? Everybody got that? Is that clear? Great. All right. We actually got up to 4. Everybody has a Tanakh or something, Megillat Esther. Hebrew or English is good, or whatever language you speak. I only speak Hebrew and English, so I cannot speak with you about it in French or Spanish or anything else. But you bring what's good for you. We got up to the 4th verse in chapter 5. Hi, Judith. Yay. Perfect timing. We really just started the class. We were just schmoozing before. And if you remember, Esther was convinced by Mordechai that she should take action. Now, Mordechai didn't actually tell her what action to take, right? Mordechai didn't say which. Hi, Carol. Perfect timing. Mordechai, we're on chapter 5 of Megillat Esther. Mordechai did not say to Esther what action to take, which I hadn't discussed this last time. But what do you think of that? You know, until now, Mordechai had told Esther exactly what to do. In fact, his last instructions were, do not somebody fill in the blank. What, Helen?
Do not reveal that you're Jewish.
Do not, basically, he said, right, don't say what is Amech, what is your nation, Moladetech, where you're from. Don't give away your heritage, which a lot of the commentaries actually say really frustrated Achashverosh. Like on one hand, there's a commentary, a midrash that says that she looked like anybody. She was so pleasing and brought grace. She didn't have specific, did I say this? It reminds me that newscasters in America have to have a neutral accent. You can't have a thick Midwestern twang or a thick Southern twang, or can you imagine having a New England twang and saying, pak the can, have a jet. Can you imagine saying that on the news? You have to have something neutral. I think actually Ohio is one of the places, like Columbus, where my husband is from. I think he said that to me once, but there were certain places, and somebody who has a thick accent has to learn to get rid of it. It has to be kind of neutral. So when it's neutral, then people don't feel like awkward, like put off. So it seems like that's a little bit what Esther was like. Nobody, except for Mordechai and I guess the Jews, I mean, if they knew that it was Mordechai's niece or cousin and or wife, according to certain midrashim, but people in the palace did not know that she was Jewish, and everybody identified with according to the midrash, with their own nation. So Mordechai gave her very clear instructions. But what did he say to her? He just said, "Im lo v'mi yodea," who knows, im la'et hazot. Sorry, trying to remember what exactly the words were. Umi yodea im la'et kazot, he got the malchut. Who knows if this is the reason, meaning hashgacha pratit, divine providence, that you got, that randomly that a Jewish woman is queen. That's unusual, as we know. But he doesn't give her instructions. So any thoughts about that, what he was thinking? Let's try to get into Mordechai's head for a moment, and then we'll get back to chapter 5. Any thoughts? This is where I take a break and you guys talk.
Well, she's on the inside, so maybe she would have a better idea than Mordecai.
Great. I love that. And I think he's giving her a hint. He's like, who knows if, what did he say? Wait, no, I'm on the wrong page. One second. Mi yodea im la'et kazot higat lamalchut. Who knows whether, no, that's wrong. I don't like the translation. I'm going to make my own translation. Who knows if for exactly this time you became royalty, meaning higat lamalchut, you became royalty. It's the same word, okay? Remember I told you, Vatilbash Esther Malchut, that Esther donned royalty, but it doesn't say Bigdei Malchut. It doesn't say garments, royal garments. It takes out the word garment. So he says to her, Higat la Malchut. And then she actually uses, yeah, 1 second, Ruby, just 1 second, I'll just finish the sentence. No, said I just want you to know that I see you. Who knows if you got the Malchut? And then she did exactly that. She donned royalty. Yes, Ruby.
We know that Esther was queen. We know she lived in the palace. But do we have any sense of how involved women were? Did they live isolated? Were they really a part of what was going on? That I don't understand. I mean, did she really know what was going on a day-to-day basis, politically, historically?
So I would say no, and I'll tell you why. I think that's a great question. Because remember that she didn't know why Mordechai was wearing sackcloth and ashes. She didn't know why he was dressed like that. Now, if she had heard about the edict, she would have at least understood why. Because she sent clothing to tell him, you should get, why are you wearing that? That's crazy. Like, she didn't hear of a death in the family, I guess. So I would say that was a very good hint. A great question, Ruby. That's a good hint to the fact that women, even she being the queen, didn't really know what was going on. Like Ahasuerus didn't summarize every day to her. Well, honey, this is what I did today. Right. And these are the documents I signed. As a matter of fact, she said she hadn't been called for 30 days. So that was a great, that's very good. But actually, I think that makes it harder for Esther. I'm just like always think of Esther. I think she epitomizes for me somebody who has literally no agency, no authority, zero. The only thing she has is the fact that Ahasuerus fell in love with her or was attracted to her. That's really all she has. I mean, Ahasuerus has no problem saying off with her head or something to that, effect. We don't know if he banished Vashti or killed her. It doesn't say he killed her, but she certainly dropped out of the picture. So where is Esther's agency, and what do we do when we feel we don't have agency, which, this isn't specifically about anti-Semitism, but I think a lot of us feel that way. Like, I don't know that I have what to fight it. It's really hard. But one of the things that I came up with the group is that we're going to build bridges with people who are outside the Jewish community, meaning with pastors or halavai imams, if that's possible. Because we have no way to combat the pro-Palestinian rallies and what they do. I certainly don't feel I do, right? That's like an enraged mob, it feels like most of the time. But what do you do when you don't have authority and you don't have agency? So you have to be courageous. Sometimes it's about being very courageous. She must have been courageous to do what she did. Even if she felt that she was against the wall, it's just hard to put your own life literally in jeopardy. I just want to commend Esther for that, which is maybe the reason why it's called Megillat Esther, which is really nice. Okay, so what happens? She tells Mordechai, gather all the Jews and fast alai. We discussed this. I'm not going to go into all the midrashim we did. We are going to fast for 3 days. I want the Jewish people to fast as well. We know that fasting is a time-worn, is that how you say it? Like it's an old, timeless tradition in Judaism, and when we're suffering, to fast. What does fasting do? Let's remember. What does fasting do? I think it's important sometimes to say that. We're going to do that twice this summer for those who can. Shivasar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, the 3 weeks, beginning and end. For those who can, I'm talking about. What does it do to fast? I think it's important to mention occasionally. Ruby, unmute.
I think it moves you away from the physical to perhaps be more spiritual.
To be more spiritual. And what does it feel like, Ruby, when you're doing it and you know that the people around you are doing it as well, or some of them at least?
It's a communal activity. It's a combined communal activity.
And you know that whatever you're feeling physically, okay, some people feel it more than others, but within a spectrum of how well people fast, everybody's feeling pretty much kind of, those who are fasting are feeling yucky. And that somehow creates a bond. I mean, it's funny, but it actually does. I think that it's actually, as hard as it is, I don't love fasting. It's really, it always makes me nervous. And I'm always nervous from before, but, and I somehow get through it and then pay for it the next day usually. Like I can never exercise the day after fasting. It's just not worth it. But there's something about fasting that binds people in a way that you don't even have to say anything. I still remember I was giving a Dvar Torah Mincha whenever the last fast day was, and I think it was Tanit Esther, because Tanit Esther was Thursday, and I think it was Motzei Shabbat was Purim. Am I right about that? I think Purim was Sunday. And I remember I looked around the room, I said, like, how's everybody doing? Are we all feeling this way? Like, I just looked around the room, like, I know, another 45 minutes so we can break our fast. Like, you just look around the room and you see. And I want to say, on the heels of that, it says, Vayehi bayom hashlishi. It was on the 3rd day of fasting. Now, whether it was the end of the 3rd day or the beginning, I don't know. How do you think Esther looked after she fasted for between 2 and 3 days?
Not very good. Not very
Not-
good.
Not very good, right. I mean, none of us look good at that, pretty much. There are exceptions, but we don't look good when we're fasting because we're haggard, we're gaunt, the color of our face, our skin actually changes, and we kind of look schleppy, right? That's just the way, that's physical. I have no idea how they do it for the month of Ramadan, honestly. I've spoken to Muslims, and I'm just in awe that they can do it, especially in the summer, but not only. So why, can I just ask what this group might think about the fact that Esther was willing on the 3rd day of fasting to appear in the court when she probably didn't look her best? So any thoughts about what might have been going through Esther's head?
Urgency.
Ooh.
She knew she had to act. She was a very strong woman.
Yeah.
And it was now or never.
Yep.
You
Now
know,
or
we
never.
experience that in our own lives.
Say more, Karen.
We do. Sometimes we're in situations where we have to step forward and we know the consequences if we don't. And somehow we muster up the energy and the courage.
Right. And in the moment, you kind of throw caution to the winds and you say, I have to, whatever it
Exactly.
is.
I don't have a choice.
Right. I don't have a choice. I also want to say that we did see a midrash on verse 4, which I want to extend. Those who read Hebrew, I'm sorry, for the English, I'll explain. But if we look in verse 4, there's a midrash that says, what is that? Remember, she stands there, they're going to ram her. Remember that? We all know that story, yeah? With the guards, they're picking up their spears to ram her and kill her. And actually, we say there was a midrash that there were 3 angels that accompanied Esther. It's really kind of sweet. One angel lifted her head because she was probably walking like this. Another one, wait, what did the other one do? 1 second. One of them put a chut shel chesed upon her, a thread of grace on her, that she would look beautiful in spite of her fasting. And the third tilted Achashverosh's golden scepter. Remember, it says she touched the head of the scepter. So according to the Midrash, I just think some of these Midrashim are very beautiful. So according to the Midrash, the Achashverosh, even though he saw her and he thought she was beautiful, he still was thinking, what is this chutzpah that you're coming in uninvited? And he couldn't have cared less that she would die. And he's like, okay, I'll replace her with somebody else. But once she touched the head of the scepter, that's a way of saying, okay, Achashverosh accepts her because of the scepter. Wait, so what was I about to say that? Oh, so she does, and he asked her, what do you want? Ima lamelech tov, if it's, she's fawning, basically, if it's okay with you, if it seems good to the king. Yavo hamelech veHaman hayom. So if you were meaning that the king and Haman will come today, where are they going to come? To the mishteh, to the feast. So if you look at the first letter, Yavo hamelech veHaman hayom, it's Yud, then a Hey, then a Vav, then a Hey, which is God's name. And we spoke about why would she need God at this very moment. So I'm just like in awe of her faith, because she's picking a time when maybe she for sure doesn't look her best. And basically she's saying, God, somebody said that here, Karen, I think, you said it's not about leaving everything to the hands of God. Like we have to take action. Were you the one who said it? I think
Yeah.
you did, and Helen
Yeah.
said it, maybe others, right? It's about us taking actions. It's not action. Yes, God, halavai, God should do a miracle or to save us. But it's about, so she's saying, look, God, I'm doing what I need to do. I'm feeling the urge. Together we prayed and we fasted. Now it's up to you to make it happen. That's why I love this midrash, that the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey are exactly when she's standing right there when she goes into the throne room, because that's when she needs God's help, when she goes in there. Okay? Everybody with me on that? I want to go back, by the way, to, everybody good? I want to go back to verse 3. What does the king say to her? Oh, Esther, what would you like? What does he say to her? It's very famous. I will give you. Go ahead, Isaac, unmute.
Ad chatzi hamalchut.
Right, meaning?
That give you up to half the kingdom. I'll
give you up to half, right? Up to half of everything I have, which is amazing and generous, and we don't really believe him, just saying. But because it seems so odd, the Midrash picks up on it and says something really cool. It says, I will give you everything except what is smack in the middle of my kingdom. And guess what was smack in the middle of his kingdom? Israel and the temple. Ad chatzi malchut. I'll give you up until what's in the half of, like in the chatzi, meaning that dividing line. It's just such a beautiful, to me that feels brilliant to say, well, one second, why would Ahasuerus say that? He has no desire to give her his wealth. He has no interest in doing that at all. But if you understand it, that he's intimating, okay, let's go back. I did a lot of research since last time, just saying. Okay, so he doesn't know what nation she's from, right? He doesn't know her lineage, but he kind of has an inkling. Why? It turns out this is considered to be 5 years after she was married to him. Now, do you think any time in the 5 years she went into the throne room unannounced? Probably not, right? And what happened 3 days ago? What happened? Why did Mordechai appear with sackcloth?
The decree.
The decree. So Ahasuerus is not as stupid as we like to make him out to be, or maybe isn't. And he's like, well, again, this is a midrashic or a Gemara interpretation. What does that mean, midrashic? That it's not in the text, right? That's what we said. It fills in the spaces of the text. So he's thinking, just put out this edict against the Jews, and all of a sudden Esther, who I don't know where she's from, she's appearing, and like maybe she's Jewish or connected to Jewish. So he kind of hints to her, I'll give you whatever you want, but I'm not giving you back the temple, because according to what we know, he stopped the building or the aliyah of the Jews to Israel. So I thought that was a clever way for the Midrash to reinterpret the Ad Chatzi Malchut, because it sounds so magnanimous, sounds so wonderful and large, they say in Israel, which means large, which means expansive. That's what large means. He's so expansive. But is that how we know Ahasuerus, who's ready to kill his wives at any moment? He's not giving up his wealth. Okay? Give me nods every once in a while. Yes, okay, good. I mean, I know you always ask when you don't understand, when you don't get something, but I'd like to know. Okay, so now we've set the scene. I think we're deep in the throne room at this point. Like we're deep in the scene of the throne room. And in Pasuk Daled, which we did verse 4, So she says she invites Achashverosh and Haman. Now, why doesn't she ask Achashverosh? She just said to her, I'll give you up to half of my kingdom. Why doesn't she say anything in that moment? Why does she invite him and Haman? Any thoughts before we learn it inside?
She wants to manipulate the situation so that,
She wants to manipulate or maybe have control, Helen?
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe have control of the situation. I like that because when she's sitting in the throne or she's in the throne room and the king and all his advisors and the soldiers, and it might embarrass him. I'm just throwing it out there. And he might say no and maybe kill her, whatever, and she would not have a second chance. So she wants to create a more intimate setting. Yes, Isaac, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I suspect that he invited Haman as a way of, on some level to start to sow some suspicion in the king's mind. Eventually, that Haman was somebody that he had to worry about, or that would
Nice.
that's all I
Yeah,
have to say.
great. No, I thought there was more. Yeah, no, I agree that, and definitely some of the Midrashim say she wants to sow some seeds of jealousy. Like on one hand, you could say, well, it's the king and the second in command, but it does feel kind of intimate and, why is a woman, his queen, inviting? Good, very good. Any other thoughts, Helen?
well, I know Rabbi Foreman goes a step further and says that, yeah, she wants him to think that she wants the king to think that there's something going on between Haman and
Right,
her.
jealousy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Which throws suspicion on Haman, who basically has the king's ear at this point. He's
Right.
doing like the king basically just gives him everything. Nice. Okay, good. Excellent. Now I can imagine, anybody else want to say something? No. So she's creating a mishteh. What's a mishteh?
Party,
Party.
banquet,
What's a party? A banquet. Good. What is the root of the word mishteh? Any thoughts?
shata,
Sheh.
drink,
Lishtot? I think so.
lishtot.
Rashi says that mishteh, right, lishtot. So Rashi says that the reason it's called mishteh, not a suda, like she could have just called it a meal, like suda and Shabbat. The mishteh means that there's wine, or I guess strong spirits / wine, and that in Persia, that was very common, that these fancy meals would all have wine, and the food was almost, just to allow you to have more wine because you can only have so much, but without on an empty stomach. So she's having a Mishnah. Now, what happens? The king could feel, a lot of people, not me included, feel better after they've had wine, right? They feel looser, they feel more comfortable. Inhibitions are loosened a little bit. The tongue is loosened. Often people feel good when they have a little bit of alcohol, or I guess a lot. Let's not go that direction. I don't know how much alcohol he had. But she said in the scene so that, as Helen said, manipulate, although it is manipulation. I mean, I would call it power, but manipulate just sounds so negative, but it is true. I agree with that. Okay, great. So quickly, so in verse 5, the king says, Maharu Haman. We're on verse 5 in chapter 5. But, hasten him, rush him, Lasot et dvar Esther. By the way, he doesn't say to do the words of Queen Esther. It's nice when women get titles, I think Achashverosh generally was called the Melech. She wasn't always called the Malka. Just mentioning that. But
What do you think the reason for? I mean, she really rushed it along. There was very little notice. It wasn't like, why don't you come to a banquet that I'm giving tomorrow or next
Right.
week? There wasn't. It was as if she's orchestrating it, so they
Orchestrating,
don't.
great word.
Haman doesn't have a chance to think about it. The king doesn't have.
Nice. And in fact, the commentaries, that's so cool that you thought that, because I just read something about that last night, which I'd never thought of, that she must have prepared everything ahead of time because it was ready. I mean, a mishteh is, you can't just whip it up in 2 seconds. You have to have a little bit of time. So it was all set in place. And yes, I agree. It sounds like one hand feeling the urgency, on the other hand not giving the king and Haman too much time. So she's giving them this enticing offer to have come into my chambers. I'm going to give you this fancy, it feels intimate. There's something that just feels special, wining and dining. Not clear where Haman, of course, fits into this picture. I get that. And yet she doesn't, again, immediately say it, but what she does do is she promises that if they come back and they already had a good time, it's like, okay, we'll come back another time. She says, but if you come back tomorrow, then I will give you what the king has asked. Now, what was it that the king had asked? She says, one second, She'elati u'bakashati. If I'm on verse 8, so she butters him up again and says to give me what I want. Just come tomorrow night, and tomorrow I will do the king's bidding. So one way of understanding it is I'll do the king's bidding, meaning I will tell you why I came into the throne room. What do I want? The other thing is, what has the king been asking her for 5 years?
Who are you from?
Where are you from? Who is your people? And he's finally going to get. So that's a second layer, right? There's the pshat layer, which is I'll tell you what I want. But the deeper one is, I'm finally the big reveal. I'm gonna give it to you. Okay, yeah, right? Okay, hold on one second. Just want to see if I can have some notes here.
How do we know it was 5 years, by the way? I mean,
That is a great question. I would love to I haven't had a chance to research that. I heard that yesterday, and when I did a lot of research and listened to some classes, I will admit that I did not research it, and I would be happy if you did. Maybe you'll find it before I do. Isaac, if you come next week, you can let us know.
okay, I'll look for it.
Yeah. It's 5 years. And maybe it wasn't, but, oh, well, one second. It's not 5 years that they're married, but there was a timeline. Remember, she had 6 months. Maybe it includes the preparation. Maybe you have to fill out a questionnaire. Where are you from? She never did that to begin with, right? So till they had the beauty pageant, no, but it must have been when they picked her. So it's at least a year of preparation. So I don't have a good answer, but I think that would be fun to research. I think it would be interesting, by the way. It would be a fun project. Maybe we could do it. I don't know. To create a timeline, somebody must have done this, of the whole Megillah. What is the timeline from the first day, and then, have little arrows that tell you when things happen? That would be really interesting. Maybe we could do it together as a group. Wouldn't that be fun? I think it would be fun. Maybe we'll do it. When we finish the whole Megillah, we'll do an exercise, and we'll start from the beginning, and we'll together do it as a group, Chavruta study, and we'll make a doc, and then I can create a timeline. I think that would be so much. I like things like that. I hope you would join me in that after we really learned it. Okay, maybe we should have done it as we went along, but we're in the middle already. Okay. Just looking. Okay, we are now up to, I did skip a little bit, but we kind of know them. Let's go to verse 9. So how is Haman feeling now? He's coming out of the Mishteh. What? How's he feeling, Isaac?
He's feeling pretty good.
He's feeling pretty good. There's a song by the Carpenters. I'm on the top of the world, looking down on creation. Right, so he's really on top of the world. I mean, he has like everything. We know he has wealth, which the Midrash says that he found Nebuchadnezzar's store in caves or where hiding places. We talked about that at the beginning, because where else did he get money from? We know that, and we know that he has money because he offered to fill the king's coffers. Is that the right word? Yes. The king's coffers and the king said, I don't need your money, but I'll still put out an edict to kill this nation, the Jews. They didn't mention them at the beginning. So we know he has money. We know he's second in command. We know that everybody literally bows down to him. Oh, very nice, Lance, but maybe he'll send it to me by email, so I'll have it. And it still would be fun, even if we had the chronology. He put something in the chat. If we did it ourselves, I think that would be fun. But let's leave it for now. So I was listening, somebody said, you can imagine any store he went into, any place he went, he goes to the front of the line. And everybody's bowing down to him. Like, he never has to wait for anything. He's number 2. He can have people executed, probably. He has the king's ear. I mean, He has the signet ring. So he has like everything he could have wanted. Sameach v'tov lev, he's happy and good-hearted, not good-hearted, joyful. But kir'ot Haman et Mordechai b'shar hamelech, when he sees Mordechai sitting in the king's gate, v'lo kam, and he doesn't get up, v'lo zam mimenu, and he doesn't move, v'yimalei Haman al Mordechai chema. Then Haman was filled with anger towards Mordechai. So let's talk about this pasuk. What are you imagining? And then I'll also tell you what the Midrash says. How did this happen? What is he angry about? Yeah, Helen.
He went from a big high to a low.
So you think it's like it's actually kind of, it could be even natural when somebody has such a high and something can like pop it?
No,
Terrible.
natural. I think it shows how much his hatred is.
Right.
Mhm.
Shows how much is hatred. Yeah, exactly.
I think it's kind of normal for somebody who's that narcissistic that here I have all this glory, and who the hell do you think you are to not give it to me?
Yep,
Just
I think so.
blind
Yeah. And in
Yeah.
a second, he goes
Right.
down.
In a second, like it doesn't matter because it's never enough. I think that's what it could be.
Right.
Yeah.
It's never enough. Do we think there's anti-Semitism here now? That's the next thing I want to ask you.
Yeah.
I mean, let's remember, we discussed this. We said that he's angry at Mordechai, kill Mordechai, or whatever, banish him. Don't kill Mordechai, but banish him, take out your wrath. I mean, to jump from one person to a whole nation and have an edict in all 127 provinces to kill them and get the king to agree, that's anti-Semitism. I mean, it's so blatant. That's, like, to me, the most obvious of all the anti-Semitism in the Megillah. And I wonder if that's what spikes it. Now, remember, there was one midrash that said that because Mordechai saved the king's life, and by revealing the plot of Bigtan and Teresh, remember we had one midrash that said that because of that, he was actually given allowance from the king, a special dispensation, that he doesn't have to bow down to Haman. And even if we go according to that, Haman doesn't care. Like, you're giving a Jew something over me? That's impossible. Jews are, chas v'chalila, filth. The Jews don't have a right to exist. Like, to me, it just feels the animosity and like unreasonable hatred, which we feel in so many corners. Somebody accosted a Jew here in the subway or in somewhere, and just beat him for being a Jew, just for being a Jew, just for being Jewish.
One of the classic anti-Semitic tropes is Jews are arrogant.
Jews are what?
Arrogant.
The Jews are arrogant.
Yeah, I think that's one of the classic things. You think you're the chosen people. I mean, all of that kind of stuff. So that kind of fits in. If Mordechai isn't going to bow to him, see, that's the Jews.
Ah, got it. Yeah. You think you're better than me, right?
Right.
You're actually low, and how dare you do that in front of other people? I think it goes along with narcissistic personality disorder. Whoever said that started off. That really fits in as well, 100%. Okay, so he's filled with anger. And then in verse 10, let me just see if I have anything. So here's one second. I just want to tell you what the Talmud says. The Talmud and the Targum, which I don't have in front of me, the Targum is translated into Aramaic. So the Targum says that he was so filled with anger that he couldn't breathe. He literally couldn't breathe. And there's another way of teaching, which is this, that Esther, how did Mordechai get to the gate? Like, how did that even happen? So we learned about the fact that some of his advisors, Achashverosh's advisors, that even if there was anti-Semitism, he still knew that the Jews had sage advice. So he had some of them be his advisors. And that Esther said, without revealing who she was, you're not tapping into all these sages we know that the Jews are smart, like you should at least get their advice. And that he was sitting, again, not everybody agrees with this, but that he was sitting at the gate with the sages, the Sanhedrin, around him. And that's what got him so angry, Haman. Why? Because he knew that he probably couldn't touch them straight on because the queen had gotten them to sit there. So there are layers of, layers of politics that surround it. So some of the anger could be that he felt impotent, that he couldn't reach out a hand and directly touch them, even though Purim time, when the Eidah would come out, or would be put into action, they'd be allowed to be killed. So I'm not sure how the Midrash, fits in with everything. These are different Midrashim. And then, okay, so now let's go to Pasuk Yud, verse 10. And Vayitapak Haman, so he had to hold himself back. Again, this Vayitapak, that's what the Midrash plays on, that he, how would we say it? Restrained himself. Litapek means to hold yourself back. And that comes from because the queen had appointed, therefore he didn't immediately go and just say to one of his, just go kill that guy for sitting there and for not getting up. And okay, so next, what does he do? Vayishlach, he came to his home. That's his safe place, most people. Vayishlach vayaveh tohavav et zerech ishto. So Vayishlach means he sent messengers, and he brought all of his advisors, the people who love him, and Zeresh, his wife, which shows us that there's a teaching that Zeresh was extremely intelligent, crafty, and what other word? And wise. And that's why he called her to this strategic meeting. And actually, we mostly hear Zeresh speaking. She's the one who comes up with ideas. Okay. Anything to say, or we're going to go on to verse 11? All right. Vayisaper lahem Haman, and Haman told them, et kivod oshro, okay, so one, kivod oshro, the glory of his riches. Rov banav, the multitude of his children. By the way, from this the Talmud learns that he had 30 children, 10 who were hanged, 10 who were killed in battle, and 10 I don't know. Ve'et asher gidlo hamelech, and the fact that the king had elevated him, maybe it wasn't not much time had happened. Maybe he was in the palace from when he had the king's ear. There's only 3 days have gone by, let's say. So the king had raised him, that he raised him above all the other, he's second in command. Okay, so all of those things, so there's a midrash that says like this. Wait, 1 second. All right, so Haman, the question is, why did he have to tell them about all this? I mean, it makes sense because he's showing off, but there's another explanation, and that is he's telling them all of his assets so they can help him figure out what's the best way to get back at Mordechai. Okay? So what are his assets? Thanks to his wealth, he had many friends who could help him get rid of his enemy. 2, he had many children. Maybe they would be helpful. 3, he's elevated over the government officials, giving him the power to issue decrees, and he could do something to make Mordechai's life unpleasant. But he's having a strategic meeting with them. And finally, there was no fear that Esther would help Mordechai, even though the other midrash says that she appointed Mordechai. But, that doesn't, since they didn't know she was Jewish, that doesn't mean she cares about him as a person, theoretically. Why? He's telling them that only he was invited to the feast, which I can imagine he shouldn't say to his wife, but whatever, and saying, but Mordechai wasn't invited. I'm number 2. Mordechai wasn't invited to this. So obviously the queen isn't really going to have trouble with me doing it. So all of these, that makes sense. I thought the Midrash did a very nice way of laying out the strategies that he was thinking of. And then in the end, it didn't get him anywhere, right? All of these things, the wealth didn't help him. Esther obviously did want Mordechai to succeed. His sons were hanged. It says here hung. I think that's improper English. I think it's hanged. He ended up actually serving Mordechai, and ultimately it's Mordechai who became the second in command to the king.
Let me just...
Yes, Isaac, please.
In terms of the children, I believe that certainly one and maybe more of his children actually, I think, became a Tana in the future. I sort of remember that. So
wait, a Tana means that he lived from up to 200 AD or whatever it's called.
Well,
So,
not one of his children, but one of his children's children. Let's put it that way.
yeah.
Uh,
Interesting. So that could have been from the 10 who remained. I also heard that once. There you go. Second thing to research.
yeah.
When people bring in things that I don't know about, I say, great, you could research.
Well, I think there's a message in that, and the message is that there's no evil that's not redeemable on some level.
Nice.
I mean, that's the way I think about it.
Beautiful. That's a great lesson to take. I love that. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, we're going now to verse 12. How many verses are there all together? A few more. Okay. And how much time? We still have time. Okay, V'yomer Haman. Sorry, this is the one. This is the fifth reason that Esther HaMalkah did not bring anybody except for me, and I'm called back tomorrow. So that was the issue, that Mordechai wasn't invited. And then he goes to 13. And what does he say in 13? Okay. V'chol zeh, and all of this, eineno shoveh li. Doesn't mean anything to me. B'chol eit, anytime asher ani ro'eh et Mordechai ha-Yehudi, anytime I see Mordechai the Jew, yoshev b'shar hamelech, sitting in the gate of in the king's gate. Now, I want to say, you could say sitting means he doesn't get up and give him honor, but that's not really what he says. He just says when he sees him, he gets angry. And that's why it's not clear that it's, you could say it's because he didn't get up and bow down, but that's not even what it says here. It's anytime he sees Mordechai ha-Yehudi sitting, that he can't imagine why a Jew should be sitting there and be given a place of kavod. Now, just want to say something that I read. Okay. Do you remember, wait a minute. Where is that? Page 116. Yep. Okay. If you look at these words in the beginning of 13, Yud Gimel, but you have to look at the Hebrew. V'chol zeh einenu shoveh li, and all of this means nothing to me, or isn't, yeah. Now look at the last letter of the words backwards. It's again God's name. Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey. Do you see that? Li ends with the Yud, Shoveh ends with the Hey, Einenu ends with the Vav, and Chozeh ends with the Hey. So it's Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, backwards and at the ends of the word. It's a midrash. It's a very kind of playing on this. Just one second. I just want to find here it is. Okay. Yeah. So remember we had said that they found God's name when Esther said at the beginning of the word. And here it's backwards at the end of the word. So according to the midrash, it's like this. When it's spelled in the first letter of the word, and it's in the correct order, it represents mercy. Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, God's name. And Esther, of course, was asking for mercy. But when it's spelled at the end of the word here, backwards, then it connotates din, judgment and severity. So Esther, in seeking to invoke Hashem's mercy for the Jewish people, alluded to God's name in the normal order. Whereas Haman was seeking to arouse God's wrath against the Jewish people and alluded to God's name in the final letters and in inverted order. Everybody with me on that? First letters, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey, and then backwards. So backwards, Oze Einenu Shoveh li. So,
Well,
yeah, go on.
If Haman hated the Jews so much that the sight of Mordechai sitting at the gate got him so upset that all his power meant nothing to him, why would he then invoke the name of the Jews' God to request Dean?
So I find
He
it very
didn't invoke it.
interesting.
The writer invoked it. He didn't invoke it.
That's a good point. But the writer says that, according to this
Yeah.
midrash, that Haman was invoking it. So it's really interesting that, according to all of the midrashim, that they knew the history of the Jewish people. They remember when Zeresh says later on, we haven't gotten there yet. Zeresh says First, Zeresh, we gotten to that she gives him the suggestion of the 50, making a tree. But later on, when Haman comes back broken-hearted and dejected after Mordecai he had to put Mordecai, what does she say to him? She says, wait a minute, this is a Jew. If you've started to go down under the Jew, we know you're never going to make it. Like, once the Jews get the upper hand, we know God is with them. So even Zeresh says that, meaning they were aware of history. They believed that different nations had different gods. Like, we don't believe that. We believe there's one God and just the God for everybody, however you imagine that God, that there's one God. We don't believe in this multitude of gods. Just like, remember when Moshe came to Egypt, to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh's like, who is your God? And we know, I mean, according to our belief, it's not a different God, but that's what they believed. So they believed, or they thought that, they believed that the Jews had a God, but he believed, and that was the thinking at the time when there's, what is it called when it's not monotheism, polytheism?
Yes.
That you can appeal to different gods to act a certain way. So according to that, Haman is trying to get God, the Jews' God, to turn God's wrath. Look, he knows that the Jews were exiled from Israel, from the land of Israel. He knows that the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. He knows that Nebuchadnezzar is the one who did it, and he found Nebuchadnezzar's, his wealth that he had hidden. So they know the history, and they think that there's a God, and you can appeal to a God. I mean, it doesn't make so much sense to us, because we don't work that way, but that's what made sense to him. But I think it's really interesting, this idea that you're trying to turn that nation's God against them. And as if they know all the ins and outs, like God's name and how to evoke it. So, great question. I mean, I think I also found that really odd at the beginning. And as again, it is Midrashim, so it's not clear, but there are hints to it in the Megillah, like Zeresh when she says that, or the fact that they just know about the Jews and that there's this deep hatred. There are just allusions to it in so many places. So we're teasing out those allusions. Okay, well, thank you for this really interesting class. We are going to meet Bezrat Hashem next Wednesday. We're almost at the end of chapter 5, and maybe we'll have time actually next week if we don't want to start chapter 6, which I don't think I want to start before next year. Maybe we can use Lance's the resources that he gave. Hi, Robert, and hi, Felice. The resources to think about the timeline. We'll see if we have time. I'll try to print that out, Lance, and see if we can maybe find that in the Megillah.
Please
get a
read
picture.
my note, because my note is based on that chronology that you have.
Cambridge service story. Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Everybody can read that. Beautiful. Thank you about modern day. But I think we are actually interested in knowing how much time passed between one thing to the next, which I think is interesting. But thank you. And you can save that note also for the end, when we do win in the story. Bezrat Hashem, halavai. Every chayal killed, every person, is just so heartbreaking and heart-wrenching. So thank you so much for joining me. We will start
Thank
next week,
you.
hopefully on time. Feel better, Karen. I
Thank
hope
you.
next week it'll be better. I still can't believe you're here after one day of surgery. Kol hakavod.
A good
It's
class.
delightful. A
Good class.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, that's what Robert Moshe said, All right, my friends. Be well.
Okay,
Take
take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.